Welcome back to the State of the Union conference. This is day one and our afternoon sessions, and we've got plenty on the agenda and on the menu for you here from Florence. If you're watching us online, you of course can choose between the three streams. That's not easy, not an easy choice there, but for all of them, please, we're inviting you to share your questions and your comments on what do you think about Europe in a changing world. You can do so as you wish on the event platform, on the official website. Go to social media, use the hashtag SOU2021. We really are looking forward to hearing from you. And as before, these 2 days, we're going to be focusing on 8 topics. Among them, they're going to be global economy, autonomy, we're going to be talking public health, we're going to be talking geopolitics, and we're going to be also talking artificial intelligence. And the next session is on promises and challenges of artificial intelligence post-COVID-19. And let me hand over now to the moderator for this session. Please welcome Madeleine Buning, professor at the European University Institute School of Transnational Governance.
Hello, very welcome to you all. It's exciting to be talking with you about the promises and challenging of artificial intelligence post-COVID-19. I start with special welcome to Commissioner Mariya Gabriel, who is the EC Commissioner for Innovation, Research, Culture, Education and Youth, and has a strong vision on innovation and research on AI. It is a pleasure to see you today at the State of the Union. Before I get back to Commissioner Gabriel with some questions, let me first briefly introduce today's two-part panel on AI. The development on artificial intelligence boosts global economic growth and can provide unprecedented opportunities for sustainable digital development worldwide. However, AI can also bring risks and negative consequences for citizens. Concerns about AI disrupting social interaction, discriminating, or replacing humans at work are widespread. AI governance requires careful steering between stimulating innovation and building societal trust. In the post-COVID-19 recovery, there is a very important window of opportunity to shape the development of human-centric AI. Just 2 weeks ago, on April 21, the European Commission proposed new rules and actions to turn Europe into, mind you, the global hub for trustworthy artificial intelligence. The combination of the first ever legal framework on AI and a new coordinated plan with member states aims to guarantee fundamental rights of citizens and business while strengthening AI uptake, investment and innovation. In this State of the Union session, we will debate the EU approach towards becoming a global hub for trustworthy AI in the context of highly competitive innovation in China and the US. The first part of the debate will focus on the competitive landscape for research and innovation and the opportunities under the new EC framework. The second part of the debate, which starts at 6 o'clock, Channel 2, will focus on the challenges of fundamental rights and biases in AI. Will the proposal be likely to remedy the risk? A video overview of the state of tech by research professor Paul Verschuren of the Catalan Institute of Advanced Study will open this debate. But now over to you, Commissioner Gabriel. I'm so happy to see you.
Hello, Madeleine. First, allow me really to say thank you. Thank you very much for inviting me to this event. It's a real pleasure to address together with you such an important topic.
Yes, and I know this is a topic that is close to your heart and that you have been working on, have strong ideas upon. So let me dive into the first question I would have for you. So how do you plan to strengthen the European leadership in deep tech startups and innovation? Because startups, I think, are very important in this space.
Well, I will move directly in substance because I would like to highlight that Europe has a unique chance to lead the fourth wave of innovation around deep tech startups. But first, we are facing two facts. On one side, let's face reality, Europe missed the train of the third wave of innovation around digital startups 20 years ago. Since then, we tried to change the situation, but let's be honest, that was not a dramatic change. One number, in Europe, we have only 7% of the unicorns in the world. But the other fact is that we are also playing a strong regulatory role in the digital age, because somehow, actually, we are the standard setting of regulations in the digital area of the world. And now also in deep tech with our latest regulation on artificial intelligence. I think that here, that's good, but what I want now, it's not only to see Europe as a power of regulation, but to see Europe as powerhouse of innovation in the fourth wave of innovation around deep tech. Because allow me to say immediately, deep tech startups are very different to digital startups, because deep tech startups are closely linked to science and are not easily replicable because they are based on protected intellectual rights. Here, this brings me to my second point. As deep tech startups are so closely linked to science, and Europe is the powerhouse of science in the world, so here we have a unique competitive advantage on leading in this new wave of innovation. We have 3 excellent tools at our disposal. We have 16 billion for the European Research Council in order to continue to pursue the advances in the frontier research. We have the European Innovation Council. Our ambition is very clear, to transform it into the European unicorns factory. And we have a very strong European Innovation Ecosystem Program that will work hand in hand with the European Institute of Innovation and Technology. That is not enough, for sure, but that is a solid base. And now we are in the next phase. We are in the design phase with my team to ensure that these 3 pillars come together nicely in a pan-European innovation ecosystem that looks for synergies between cohesion funds and Horizon Europe. And I think that I do not only want Europe to regulate innovation champions coming from other parts of the world. I want that the majority of the future innovation champions come from Europe. And Europe has all that is needed to lead in this new wave of innovation. And I think that we can succeed if we continue to work together with them. Co-creation, co-design, tackling obstacles, and be innovative in the way to propose solutions.
Yeah, thank you for that. That sounds very promising and enthusiastic. And so I have another question. So given the fact that, because I was fascinated by the way the whole system was built up in the new proposal. So given the fact that AI is in fact the first deep tech that has become mainstream, I was wondering what was the thinking of the Commission behind taking a future-proof and risk-based approach to the new AI proposal?
Well, the thinking behind the chosen approach is that we see the artificial intelligence as a force for good in society and as a force that protects and fosters fundamental rights and values, that all measures are in place for applications and governance of AI, but to be genuinely trusted. We are talking about balanced approach. We are talking about an ecosystem of excellence and ecosystem of trust. And trust is coming from 2 important elements: the respect of the fundamental rights for every single citizen and the legal clarity. And that was behind the thinking of our approach, because remember, now for the last 3-4 years, we have a very coherent approach. The first statement on this issue, that was thanks to the European Group on Ethics in Science. And they called at that moment to have this process and to have international coalition thinking about the use, the production, the design, and the governance of artificial intelligence. Immediately after what we have done, that was to publish our European strategy on artificial intelligence with a key element, the Artificial Intelligence Alliance, because they were tasked to develop guidelines on the ethics of artificial intelligence. And I will always remember the debates and the different points of view, but that was obvious since the beginning, that the protection of our values, the balanced approach. The keyword trust is at the heart of this approach. And allow me here to add another important element, because I'm not sure that there is so much people that know that. In our Horizon Europe program, we have an ethics by design approach. As part of the review process, high risks for fundamental rights and freedoms are identified to make sure that all our funded actions comply with key ethical principles. And I'm conscious that that can be interpreted as obstacles for research and innovation, but that is not the case. On the contrary, the aim is that Europe offers a stable and secure regulatory environment for deep tech innovators to attract the best investors, to establish their deep tech companies in Europe and turn Europe into a powerhouse of the new wave of innovation. So yes, we have our three key elements that we need to preserve, and that's for sure human-centered approach. It's absolutely necessary. We have the protection of the European values and fundamental rights, and thirdly, the sustainable and efficient use of resources. Very clear, and I really hope that that's the way to on one side, to develop the opportunities offered by artificial intelligence, but to address some of the very specific risks that we don't need at this time, where we are looking for a more inclusive and more strong societies and economies.
Thank you very much. And we will debate that later in the debate, and I'm very happy that you're joining us there as well. But this kind of risk-based approach, is this something, especially since this aims to protect citizens, is this something that you imagine the Commission taking up more in these volatile and innovative deep tech environments? Is this the first of? Do you think we will do this more as Europeans?
Absolutely. And I think that the field of innovation is the very good example that we have to always to bring our attention to this important aspect, that on the other side, to be very careful not to create obstacles and difficulties.
Yeah, and now we're talking about it, is that, drafting future-proof legislation is of course what you want, because you have to balance, like I said in my introduction, between, making innovation possible on the one hand, and on the other hand, avoid that citizens take risks that we find as a society unacceptable. But those open norms that result in that kind of future-proof regulation can also create legal uncertainty.
But that's why we need here to pay attention to the innovation principle, to the regulatory sandboxes, because here we'll have real examples. And I think that the trust of our citizens can come from these examples. So that's why it's our duty now to facilitate the use of these flexible instruments to our innovators, and together with the good practices and good examples, to convince more and more people that is possible, without making any compromise with fundamental values and principles.
Yeah, that's the guardrail, that's clear. And can you tell a little bit more about these regulatory sandboxes?
Well, I think that one of the main obstacles is how we can balance some of our weaknesses and some of our strengths, because we all know that in the European Union, we are very strong in some fields, but we have 27 legislations, we have 27 different procedures. So I think that one of the main demands coming from our startups, from our innovators, it's really to allow them to be flexible, to address some of the already existing difficulties in a new way that is definitely with different speeds, and that will be the case with the regulatory sandboxes. We have already some good examples in some of our member states, but I think that it's really time to do something at European level.
Yeah, but because why do you stress so much the European level? Why is that so important according to you?
Because actually we don't have a real European innovation ecosystem. The fragmentation is one of the main obstacles, and we are facing this obstacle for the last 20 years. I think that it's absolutely important that we address this, and that passes, yes, by the legislation too.
Yeah, clearly. Okay, and another question from my side is the EU Unicorns Group recently presented their white paper to ensure the EU to become an innovation leader, especially on deep tech and AI. And how do you assess their proposal? What do you think of their proposals, especially on AI?
Well, I'm really very proud of them, because the white paper put forward by the European Unicorns Group is a very valuable contribution to what I already said, to the design of the future of the European innovation policy. Because, as you know, recent strategic evolutions are leading to review and upgrade our ambitions and goals, and much more has to be done, especially in these critical fields like artificial intelligence or quantum, but also in all deep tech ones. So the recommendations that have been put forward by the founders of the many European unicorns, it's a very strong signal, because I must say that when in April, that was our first meeting, that was a surprise for me to discover that that was the first time where a commissioner, together with our unicorn leaders, sit around the same table and started to talk about common directions, common instruments, and common policies. So I think that here we have something to do in the future too. We need to give voice to them. They can show us the way forward to ensure that Europe becomes the leader of the new wave of innovation. And they have a lot of ideas. Allow me to mention 3 of them, because they are indeed very interesting, future-oriented, and we are taking them very seriously. Because actually we are in the process of assessing carefully the different proposals, including for a tech sovereignty fund, and about the flagships for deep tech, artificial intelligence in particular. So in deep tech, they have proposed a flagship on using public procurement to support deep tech startups. Another one is developing a blue card to attract the best talent from anywhere in the world of Europe. And I think that it's a very good signal that it's the same commissioner that for the first time within the same portfolio has education and innovation. And third example, maybe they are proposing to extend the framework of the European projects of common European interest to incorporate better the needs of the deep tech startups. And we all know that they are facing some very particular obstacles. For example, they are usually very capital intensive in the first phase of the development of the pilots. And that's why we have good examples, but now it's time really to work together with them. So yes, legal, budgetary constraints have to be taken into account, but as I already said it, we for the moment consider very seriously every single one of those recommendations.
Wow, thank you so much. You gotta love your energy and inspiration on this one. If everyone in Europe has your energy, I'm sure we're gonna get it done. Thank you so much for this very inspirational assessment of the situation. We're excited that you're joining the panel as well. And I'm now gonna introduce the panel that will join us in this live stream at this very moment. Thank you very much. And please stay with us so you can join the conversation. So in the panel, I would like to introduce, first of all, I don't know if he's already in. Yes, I see he's already in. Welcome all. Dominik Bösl, professor of the Hochschule der Bayerische Wirtschaft and founder and chairman of Robotics and AI, Governance Foundation. Secondly, Joanna Bryson, professor of ethics and technology at the Hertie School in Berlin. Andrea Renda is the third speaker, senior research fellow and head of the Global Governance, Regulation, Innovation and Digital Economy at the Center for European Policy Studies, and my colleague, part-time professor at our STG. Andy Wyckoff also joining us. Hi, Andy, great, from the OECD, director of the Directorate of Science and Technology and Innovation. We're so excited to have you here in this really amazing panel. So let me tee up the discussion first briefly, because you know the proposal is so recent that it might be useful to give a little bit of context to those that haven't read it. So as we have just heard from the Commissioner Gabriel, to be globally competitive and accelerate investment in AI, the European Commission is funding research and taking lots and lots of actions to make sure that Europe becomes more innovative in the space of AI, including the Recovery and Resilience Facility foresees 20% of digital expenditure, as was also just shared by Commissioner Vestager in the earlier part of the State of the Union. And at the same time, the Commission aims to eliminate hurdles of bringing greater legal clarity. Simplifying the administrative burden and cost for companies should help safe integration of AI in consumer products, ranging from lawn mowers to 3D printers and all kinds of games. The proposal aims to be future-proof by using open technology-neutral definitions. We already just touched upon that. And that is a smart approach in a highly volatile, innovative sector. However, we have also heard some criticism on the vagueness of the language of the current proposal. And I'm sure we will get to talk about that as well with the panel. Before the panel gets the first question, I have a question for the audience. Please go to Swapcard and there answer the following poll question. To what extent do you think regulators should prioritize strict AI regulation over leaving space for innovation? So it's not a very nuanced question, but that's also what makes it very interesting for a poll. So there we go. First, Dominik Bösl, welcome, great you're there. I'm also interested in talking with you about innovation power that is to be expected from the European Commission in the realm of the new proposals. And what do you think about these new proposals? Do you think that will be able to guarantee a strong European innovation in research and development in a very highly competitive global market? Because as also Commissioner Gabriel just alluded to, we're lagging a little bit behind in Europe, and we would really like to make up for that difference. Dominik, please go ahead.
Well, first of all, thank you for having me. And it's a very exciting time, and it's also a very exciting proposal. And yesterday, for example, I was also part of a panel at the United Nations Science, Technology and Innovation Forum. And I can tell you the discussion about our European suggestion on regulating AI is all over the boards everywhere. And this is, I think, first of all, it's a great thing. And I think that also the idea that Europe tries and enforces to be leading in the field of regulation and the special responsibility and governance, that is something that I love to see. On the other hand, and that also always seems to happen, as you know, and by the way, short disclaimer, I do have a strong industry background. I just recently transitioned into academia, so I still have a little bit this industry person sitting on my shoulder here. Well, it is disruptive times. AI, and especially as I come from robotics, the embodiment of artificial intelligence is going to permeate our living realm. And I can tell you, our grandchildren are going to be growing up as AI and robotic natives. And for sure, this leaves us as the last generation of robotic immigrants, so to say, with very analog migration background in a interesting position, because always when there's disruption happening, people can be afraid or don't know what's going to happen and so on. So for these generations, this will be daily business and they are not going to be afraid. On the other hand, I love that the current approach tries to involve all the stakeholders. It's a stakeholder-driven approach, that it is pushing industry and all the stakeholders towards that they have to make their technology that they're developing and researching explainable and understandable, which I believe is a very important fact. On the other hand, yeah, sure, and you already mentioned it, it starts that industry voices are coming up and saying, oh no, this is inhibiting innovation and we're getting the golden handcuffs and all that. Well, to some extent, sure, there are parts in the proposal that need to be discussed. So one that comes to mind, for example, is the definition of AI in the appendix, or in the annex. actually saying that I think it's the third part of the definition, that everything that is logical software might be artificial intelligence. Well, if you really get close down to that definition, then it would mean that your Excel or spreadsheet calculation tool would be artificial intelligence, and depending in which area you're using it, it could be actually a high risk application. Although it is not meant like that, and we should treat it with with that in mind. And there will be discussion, as always, with regulation. I heavily vouch for not over-regulating, but I think we can overcome these struggles. And by the way, currently this is a proposal, and the proposal has to be discussed, and there is still a long way till it's realized. And I think now this healthy process of discourse is happening. And again, I love that Europe is taking the first step. We can really put our mark down on a global scale. We have to keep the innovation speed in mind, and we shouldn't overregulate, as always. But honestly speaking, that's always what industry is crying about. And so, yeah, as long as we approach it on a reasonable basis, I think it's a very good first step.
Yes, so you don't see it as an impediment for innovation. You see it pretty positive, if I listen to you.
Personally, I do. Again, I know that there are concrete complaints. So again, for example, the definition is very broad, and if you really want to, and if you have if you really want to inhibit innovation, you can. I think there we have to reshape. Then some other things, some of the things that have been declared high risk, I do understand why this happens. So for example, everything educational, to some extent, it makes sense. On the other hand, if now we currently, for example, submitted a proposal for a AI-based education tool. Currently, from what I read, this would clearly fall into that area, and so we have more. We have to do documentation, we have to do certification, and all that. But I think these fringe cases can be sorted out, and this will be the healthy process that has to start now. But yeah, overall, I'm positive that it exists. I'm positive that Europe is taking the first step. The details have to be reworked a bit.
Sure. Okay. Interesting. Thank you. Now I'll go to Joanna Bryson. Hi. So, what do you think about these proposals? Do you think they really, are able to protect the human rights proportionately and predictably, as the Commission aims here? And how do you see AI in the EU innovation going forward? Because that's a connected question to that.
Okay. Well, again, thanks a lot for having me, and I'm glad to be on this panel. I actually want to start a little bit with the framing that Commissioner Gabriel gave us. She almost made it sound surprising that we're leading in regulation. But I think the EU's leadership in regulation actually it explains all the wonderful things that the President talked about this morning, our strengths as a union, our economic strengths. And that's exactly why, even though they threatened us, GAFM and everybody else, except for a few small newspapers and things, were here the day after GDPR started. So it is precisely because of the strengths of our regulation, the strengths of our economy, which is based upon our regulation, that we are able to regulate. And I would also argue that that's part of the reason we don't have really large market cap companies. It's not because we don't have innovation. A lot of the innovators who did that fled to a different domicile that had less good regulation. And maybe they aren't under appropriate taxation regimes, which is distorting a lot of economies because of some of the wages that are getting paid, things like that. So I don't think we should be insecure about where we are. We have something like 23% of the global GDP in the EU, and a lot of that is digital, a lot of that is AI. So going back to the AI regulation, personally, I also have been programming professionally for 7 years, so I also have a bit of industry, including with European superstar Lego. So I do have an inside perspective on those small and large software companies, but I still think that the regulations, the suite of regulations that the EU has brought out will help everyone. It'll help stabilize the entire situation. And the AI regulation seems to be particularly focused on the well-being of people and how citizens can take control and understand the transformations, the digital transformations that are going through them. So I loved what Dominik just said. largely. But the one thing I would say is I love the fact that there's a very broad definition of AI. I think it doesn't make sense to try to regulate only certain magic software. Let's regulate all software and let's do it completely proportionately. And that's one thing. Proportionality means no hard barriers. So I'm still opposed, even though there's 4 now instead of just 2 categories. I think we need to be treating these all as manufactured artifacts. And so thinking about liability and things proportionate to the threat, proportionate to the damage. So if we just tell companies and start holding them accountable for the damage that their software causes, then I don't think we would have as much of an issue with having to build in proportionality into the law. I think we should do a real risk-based approach is a continuum. But I understand that people want guidance and things. But actually, I'll give another thing that's a flaw that needs to be fixed, and I'll end. You cannot have a data set that is perfect that gives you fair outcomes, because any data is based on the world, and the world is not fair. I'm sorry, with the perfection, the difference between sexes and their reproductive capacities, these are things that we have to work hard to try to address. It's not something we just get from data. So there's a few things that are just clearly impossible in the legislation as it stands, but I think these can be fixed. I'm optimistic with Dominik there.
That's so good to hear. You are certainly a glass half full person. Also,
oh yeah, I guess. I'm also a dyslexic one, so I had that upside down. Sorry.
Yes, no worries. All positive. Now, talking about positive, going to Andrea Renda, who was part of this high-level group on AI. And I'm so excited to have you at the panel, because you can share with us what was the uptake of the Commission of your proposals, and is there still anything missing you would like to see in there for successful innovation of AI in the EU?
Thanks, Madeleine, and thanks for having me, and greetings to all my co-panelists. It's been a long journey, and I remember when Commissioner Gabriel came to see us in Helsinki at the high-level expert group. It was the first time that we met with the group, and you had come to tell us actually that we had to deliver even earlier than we had thought on a very important dossier. And then I think we did a good job on the high-level expert group, at least on that side, which is the side of defining, first of all, what is trustworthy AI. Not only ethically aligned AI, but also looking at legal compliance and looking at robustness. And then defining principles and the requirements that we see today largely reflected in the proposal, because the regulatory requirements that apply in a proportionate way to high-risk AI are a slight reorganization, but largely are taken from the ethics guidelines for trustworthy AI that the 52 musketeers, perhaps a bit too many for being musketeers, but the 52 musketeers produced already in April 2019. It's been a long journey also because thanks to the high-level expert group, but also the AI Alliance that Commissioner Gabriel was mentioning, thousands of people that engage with this process, the Commission has gone from an initial input from the Parliament was a bit shocking, handling with fear, the AI, mentioning Frankenstein, proposing to give personality to robots, a legal personality to robots. In 5 years, 4 or 5 years, we came to a much more reasonable approach to AI. And the Commission has shown, if you allow me, to be a little bit of a learning system, right? A little bit like the AI systems that we try to regulate and promote, because it has learned until the very last minute. It has learned also, but most of you, I would say all of you have seen the leak of the proposal. Even between the leak and the last final few weeks, there has been an improvement. The other legacy that I see from the high-level expert group is the risk-based approach. And I agree with Joanna, as I most often do, on the fact that in principle, it should be a continuum. But it's already something, Joanna, that until a few weeks before the proposal was released, the Commission was still on a binary approach, high risk or nothing. And I think that at least we have 4 risk levels and enough flexibility to make this a successful piece of regulation when it comes out and when it's finalized. Final thing, the regulatory sandboxes, I think, are also a very interesting part of this proposal. A dedicated section, a part of a bigger movement that tries to give member states a bit more leeway in experimenting with potential alternative solutions to comply with the principles and goals of European legislation. Here we have a dedicated section in the proposal. I think this can stimulate innovation quite a lot. Anything missing? Yes, I probably would like to see a little bit more, and when the governance mechanisms will finally be in place, on what happens after the AI reaches the market, on the so-called market surveillance or exposed sort of post-market part of the regulation, which is there, but I think most of the risks eventually will emerge when AI systems start interacting with each other and interacting with humans. So I'd like to see that a little bit more, and the rest will come. I'm sure the European Parliament will also do a superb work on this. And final thing, as you're about to give the word to Andy, my friend Andy, I think on the definition side, the high-level group didn't win, because I think the definition mostly echoes the OECD definition, right? So back to you, Madeleine.
Thank you, Andrea. And it's so funny because Commissioner Gabriel did exactly the same thing to me when I was chairing the high-level group on this information. Also, then she told me you have to deliver faster. So that's a trick we now know for the future. No kidding. So that's good and interesting. And also the thing that is missing, I would say, Andrea, if I listen to you, is when the systems are deployed and getting into contact with human beings. Of course, liability and product liability issues come at place. And we know the Commission is also working on that space right now. So I think we're covering all bases step by step. And now the floor to Andy. Yeah, my question to you will obviously be, do you think that this EU proposal on AI will lead the way towards global standards on innovation in human-centric AI? And what would be required for that? You won on the definition, that's already great, but the whole system of low until high risk and that kind of future-proof approach and the stimulation of innovation, how do you see that becoming more globally impactful?
Thank you, Madeleine, and thank you, Andrea and Commissioner. It's great to be here as well. And yeah, I want to tip my hat to the Commission on this draft proposal, which I think is, it's great to get the ball rolling. And I think the way you framed it as well, with it is a proposal, it's a 2-year process. You've built in these feedback loops to refine it, and I think that will kick off. It already has, as Dominik has said. I was at the same UN event yesterday, and yeah, it's already started a conversation around the OECD and beyond, I'm sure. So I like that. I also like that it's going to spark a lot of experimentation, copycats, and hopefully that will provide you with the feedback and sharing of kind of knowledge, what will work and what won't, particularly in different contexts. I also think it will provide some certainty. As people have said, there's been a lot of hype around AI, and with it comes confusion and leading by anecdote a little bit more than by solid policy analysis and evidence. I would hark back just for a second, because I don't want to be too much of a cheerleader here, to what the Commissioner was saying about really the need for the EU now to match its legislative leadership with creating that EU ecosystem with innovation. And it's a competitive environment. I guess I would just, that's obvious. But I want to say, by our statistics, and I can roll out a few, there's a pretty big gap in terms of venture capital. Even venture capital from the EU is not in the EU. It's going elsewhere for AI. In terms, great skill base. You're absolutely right. By our stats, you are world class and at the frontier in creating skills and investing in AI. But a lot of those skills don't get picked up in business in Europe, and they go to other businesses around the globe by our stats. And the last thing I would just say, even R&D, and I'm a big fan of the framework program. And again, congratulations. We've seen a huge uptick in R&D there. And we don't have good statistics on this, which I lament. We hope to improve, but we have started to scrape and gone through proposals of funding, not only your own EU Cordis, but National Science Foundation, NIH in the US, Japan, and others. And again, we find that you're just NSF and NIH alone in the United States, forget Department of Defense or NASA, have matched basically where Cordis is now. And so, and we don't have Chinese data, but we know that they too are a big player here. So I guess to try to answer your question, Madeleine, I think you will have a demonstrable effect on setting the debate rolling, and with that, help create a standard that I think you're going to see picked up, just as you have seen with GDPR. It'll get changed as it goes around the OECD world, which again, I think will benefit Europe eventually as well.
Thank you. So maybe a competitive disadvantage becoming a competitive advantage after all. But yeah, okay, great. So this is for me the moment to go to Commissioner Gabriel, because I was wondering, you hear all these pretty positive reactions, and I'm like excited for you that happens. Would you have some reflections yourself on those, and maybe some ambitions of things you would like to do even better?
Well, for me, it's clear that it's a very positive first step. So we need to continue our approach step by step. And that was really important to listen that the last 4 or 5 years, we definitely managed to advance in our way, but we need to stay very vigilant and to address some of the threats or risks that even we didn't see before. So that's why for me, that was so important to talk about stakeholder-driven approach, to have something that is explainable and understandable. And here I would like to touch the issue of education, because I want to share with you that, you know me now, I will create a high-level expert group to work on AI in education. It's really time to address this, because trust in this education community, it's not shared by everyone. We need here really to address the fears of our teachers, to equip our young people with the necessary tools, because yes, Dominik, you said that our young people will be AI natives, but we said that for our actual generation that they are digital natives. But what happened during the pandemic? We definitely here were surprised to see that there is a lot of young people that don't have the right competencies and skills to be really in this digital world in safe and secure situation. So I think that it's really important to work on this. And yes, Madeleine, I will not change my habitude. I will ask them to work fast and to deliver rapidly. But thank you very much, Joanna, for your intervention too. I think that it's absolutely important to see how we can address one of the main issues. I agree with you that we need to use the strengths of our economy, but that's exactly, for me, the added value of our approach to artificial intelligence, that it's not based only on our economy, it's based on our fundamental principles and values. That's why, for me, we need here, of course, to have legal clarity, legal certainty, but what I received from your message is that we need to bring them only there where it is strictly needed, and really to preserve this field where innovation can thrive and when we can at least be adequate with our times, because things are evolving so rapidly. And yeah, thank you very much to Andrea for your experience. I think that it's really important to work more and more about this post-market regulation, to see what happens when the technology is deployed. And I think that here with the European Innovation Council, we can bring some important experiences or examples of what happened, because for the first time, we'll invest massively in startups and SMEs with disruptive technologies and especially artificial intelligence. But this time, we are not stopping at the stage of prototype. We would like to help them scale up and deploy their products and services. And here we have some very encouraging results, but of course we need to follow all this very, very closely. So that's my main message. And thank you very much for making me more confident. I think that it's really important to uphold the innovation principle, meaning that any proposal for regulation should be scrutinized to assess the impact on innovation. because overregulation may stifle innovation, which we want to avoid. And that's why we have to preserve this balanced approach, of course, playing with our strengths, with our excellence in science, transforming that into European ecosystem of excellence in artificial intelligence. But we need to aim and building a European ecosystem of trust. And we all have seen with your interventions that this trust, we have to obtain it from every single citizen, from every single sector, and from our talented young innovators too. So thank you very much. Maybe last point, because yes, artificial intelligence is working with data and we have our economy. One word on women and girls. We need more girls and more women when we talk about artificial intelligence. And I'm really very proud that with the European Institute of Innovation and Technology, we decided now, and with the Digital Education Action Plan, to invest in our girls and to support better our women to lead this new wave of innovation. Just an example, two months ago, I launched my last initiative, Women Tech EU. We would like to support 50 deep tech companies led by women in order really to show that we can lead by example. Because yes, Andy, you touched the issue of venture capital, but it's just not acceptable that venture capital for women-led companies is only 1-2% of all the venture capital that is coming in Europe. So I think that yes, here we have a lot of other questions to address, but I'm really reassured that that's the best way, with dialogue, with arguments, and with a very close look at the developments, and with disruptive technologies, we can advance together.
Thank you so much. And your plea for diversity, we got a lot of positive yes in the whole panel I saw. So of course, we have to be more diverse also in this space. That's absolutely true. There was one thing that Andy said that triggered me a little bit, and that had to do with that we would educate people, also girls, but that those that we educate here then will work, for instance, in the US. So how are we going to make it very attractive to stay in the EU?
It's a question for me, Madeleine. Okay, well, I think, yes, it's true. It's one of the main challenges that we are facing. Now, you know me, I stay a very pragmatic person. I think that the last 1 year with the negotiations on the new Erasmus Plus program and Horizon Europe program, we managed to put some new instruments. Allow me to give you 2 examples. In the new European research area, for a first time, one of the 4 main priorities is the transfer of results of science into products and services in our economy. But that means that we have to strengthen the intersectoral mobility from research to business and for the entire ecosystem. The other example is that now we are working on European universities alliances. We need to modernize our higher education systems. We need to have a challenge-based approach. We need to have an approach where since the beginning, our private companies, our regions are involved and to work together in order really to make this passage between the world of science or education and the world of business more easy. But it's only the first instruments that we have at our disposal. But I really think that if we manage to use the funding that is at our disposal, if those somehow pilot projects will show good results, we have all in our hands to transform them into something operational and tangible and sustainable. So I think that it's a good base. At least there is a difference only when we compare with 1 year ago.
Thank you for that. And now, of course, I will go to Andy. So what do you think about this? Will this work? Is there anything else we could do?
So, Madeleine, I don't want to confuse this with statistics, but Statistics Sweden's done a really good survey, and one of the few good surveys that are out there about what it is that will help uptake AI in businesses. And legal or ethical issues are there, just relevant, but it was number 9 out of 9. Number 1 was skills, exactly what the commissioner is saying. And number 2 was enterprise vision. And I think by raising awareness and panels like this help to do that, you can maybe show the promise and the utility of AI, and that's really what the proposed legislation tries to do too, in a constructive way and minimizing the harms.
Thank you so much for that. That's really great. I'm closing off the panel right now. Showing gratitude to all of you, to your contributions. We would have had much more. If we could have had like 2 days, we could still be talking. So this is always frustrating and just a snapshot. But for those of you that are interested, we also have the next part of this panel at Channel 2 at 6 o'clock, where we will be talking about the other side of the coin that has to do with the human rights and citizens' trust, where we will focus a little bit more on that element, because innovation seems to be pretty good and hopeful. But now, how do we look at the other side? So thank you so much, and see you soon. Looking forward to the future. Bye.